Kum learn about Gemara with Tzoy Shabbos Parshat Noach. We are up to the Dalet Amar Aleph on top of the page. We compared Nedarim to Naziris, and we learned back and forth certain laws. Like we learned the concept of Yados. How do you know that if you do an incomplete vow, it's still considered a vow? We learned also, one of the things that we learned was Bal Ta'acher, which is the Aveira, the Isser of delaying things, also applies to Nazir as well. You know, if you make a promise to bring a carbon, you have to bring it within 3 Yom Tovim, or the different opinions we had in Gemara Shoshana. And how does that apply to Nazir? So trying to work it by Nazir, the moment you said you'll be a Nazir, you're a Nazir. So what do you mean, don't delay? And if you say I'll be a Nazir whenever I desire to be, then there is no Isser of delay, because it's up to you whenever you desire. So the first answer was Rabbi. He said, you said you will not depart from this world before you are Nazir. So therefore, we don't want you to delay it, because you never know when you'll depart this world. Okay, now we're going to give different answers, saying, to explain where does Baal Ta'acha come in when it comes to Nazir. So when Davdalim and Aleph, the very first word. Acha B'Yaakov says, you know how he's talking about? Going, for example, the Nazar, you declare that I will be a Nazir, but you're standing now in a cemetery. And one of the things that a Nazir is forbidden to do is to stand in a cemetery. So if you're standing in a cemetery and you become a Nazir, there's an argument of Yechon Shlakish whether you actually become a Nazir or not. Rabbi Yechon says you become a Nazir straight away, and you'll be, and if you remain there after you're born, you'll even get Malchus. And the Shlakish says you're not a Nazir yet. It's only when you step outside the Beis HaKvaros you have to accept upon yourself Naziris. Those you're making a promise, you will become a Nazir. So therefore, according to Reish Lakish, if you then take your time before you leave the cemetery, you are violating the Isser of Baal Ta'acher. Because when it comes to Nazir, you don't have to wait 3 Yom Tovim to be over Baal Ta'acher. You're over Baal Ta'acher, according to many, straight away. Says the Gemara. This only makes sense according to the Shlakish, who says, you don't become a Nazir because you're still standing in the cemetery. Therefore, you have to step outside before you become a Nazir. Fine. But according to Rabbi Yechon, it says the moment you make the promise to become a Nazir, you are a Nazir. But you're doing it in Aveira and you're Tameh. So what Aveira is delaying? Delaying what? You're already a Nazir. You are a Nazir, just you're doing the wrong thing, number one. But furthermore, there's another interpretation of the argument between Rabbi Yechon and Shlakish. We took it simply as, according to Rabbi Yechon, you became a Nazir. According to Shlakish, you did not become a Nazir, and you have to step outside of the cemetery before you become a Nazir. But there's another interpretation from Ha'amar Marbar Amashi. He understood the argument very differently. He says, according to everybody, you become a Nazir straight away. The only argument is, according to Rabbi Yechanan, if you don't leave the cemetery, you will be over an avera of being tamei, and you will get malchus. Even though you didn't walk into the cemetery, you're already in the cemetery. According to the Shlakish, you will not get your 39 lashes unless you actually walk into the cemetery. One of the reasons is because it's a lav she'ema ma'isa, standing there, you're not doing anything. So how can you get malchus? Anyway, but the bottom line is they both agree. Rabbi Yechon and Shlakish agree. You became a Nazir straight away. Well, the question is whether you get lashes or won't get lashes. So if you became a Nazir straight away, where's the Aveira of don't delay? Says the Gemara, furthermore, you become a Nazir straight away. The entire argument revolves around Malchus, the only argument regarding Malchus. So, if so, where is the Isa of delaying coming in? Says I'm going to tell you where the Isa of delay comes in. You're a Nazir straight away. But what kind of Nazir are you? You're a Nazir that's Tamei. And the law then says that all the days you counted are relevant. You have to wait 7 days till you're no longer tamei. You have to bring karbanos, then you start afresh. That naziris of starting afresh, that naziris of tara, that's what you're delaying by staying every minute. You're staying longer in the Beis HaKvaros, and that's where the Baal Ta'acha comes in.
That's kuf daled. That way it's kuf daled.
No, daled amid aleph. Daled in the Nedarim, the Sech in the Nedarim. We're not in Ksubis anymore. We're in the Nedarim, and the Daled, the very top of the. I'm not exactly sure where you're up to now, but Daled, about 6-7 lines on the top of the page. If someone can tell them in Art Scroll what you're up to. Someone has an Art Scroll there. It appears no one has one.
4A1.
4A1.
Okay, in the middle, bottom, the end, first column, second column.
First column. Third paragraph.
Okay, first paragraph. Okay, so many you heard that first column, first the third paragraph. Okay, says the Gemara. So where does it come the Isser of delaying? I feel about the you know where the Isser of delaying is? Because Nazir is the Tara. We want you to be a Nazir, a proper Nazir that is Tar. And the fact that you're delaying that because you hung around the cemetery and you have to still, go through 7 clean days, and then you have to cleanse yourself, and then you have to go bring your kabbanas, and you're delaying the next stage. That's the delay. Amar Basha says, so I learned a new halacha from here. Since now we've learned that even if you're a Nazir, delaying the Naziris of Tara is considered delaying. Nazir shetima atzv amazing. If you deliberately became a Nazir, besides the fact that you did an avera of becoming tamei, but besides that, you're also over the is of delaying Nazir's Tara. Because you became tamei, now we have to postpone the Naziris. You start all over again. You got to first wait till you become tired, bring the kabbanas again, and therefore you commit a second avera called bal ta'acher. You delayed the Naziris of Tahara. So that's answer number 2. Comes along Gemara, answer number 3. Again, Rabacha, but different Rabacha. Rabacha b'nei Ravika. Rabacha, the son of Ravika, Amar, he says, you know what the delay is? You're supposed to take a haircut. You bring 3 kabbanas. An oila, and a chattas, and a shlamim. These 3 kabbanas, and then you have to take a haircut. And the hair we put it under the pot that you cook the shlamim, and the hair gets burned. And if you delay your haircut, so that's where by nazir there's a mitzvah of taking a haircut, and that's where the issue of delaying comes into play. But now there's an argument if you're permitted to go back to normal life and drink wine and everything else if you didn't go through all the steps, including the haircut. So but you don't have to tell me, Lamandam, according to that view, that without taking a haircut, you're not yet fully free and you still cannot, drink wine and all that. Then of course, you're delaying that. It's a big mitzvah, it's imperative, and you're delaying it. You don't hold if you don't take a haircut, you're still 100%, you can go drink wine, all that. It's just a mitzvah that you have to do one day. Nevertheless, mitzvah giluach miyal, the fact is you didn't fulfill this mitzvah, even though it doesn't prevent you from going back to normal life, but it's a mitzvah that's on you, and if you're delaying it, you're delaying it. Mazrutra Bered Rav Mariam, Mazrutra Mari says, he gives a third answer. He gives a fourth answer. You know what about the acher is? Part of when the nazir concludes the 30 days, he has to bring 3 kabbanas. And if he delays bringing those 3 kabbanas, therefore it is bal ta'acher. And where do we learn that out? From Nedarim. And the Gemara asked the obvious question. The whole concept about the acher comes from sacrifices. Don't delay your sacrifices. So what are you telling me now that we learn bal ta'acher by nazir? We learn bal ta'acher by nazir from Neder. You shouldn't delay your Nedarim. Forget learning one from another. You're talking about kabbanas. You have to bring it as soon as you can. So therefore, you're over about ta'acher because inherently every carbon comes with that tag, that avera about ta'acher. So ask the Gemara. Are we learning from the equation, the hekesh between the nazir and Neder? Mahasam nafkala is a separate pasuk altogether. It says in the pasuk, if you made a promise, don't delay your carbon. Hashem will demand it from you. And we darshan, what does Darish Yidishana come to include? Elu chatois v'ashamas. You have kabbanas, a sin offering or a guilt offering. You have to bring it on time. If you don't, you're delaying. So why do I need a separate hekesh to teach you that by nazir, it's not enough the fact that it's your carbon, but nazir is something special that you're about to ach. Says the Gemara, I would have thought nazir is different. I would have thought I would have thought that by nazir there's a special chiddush here. And because there's a special chiddush by nazir, I would have thought that nazir is different. There's no bal ta'acher, and that is why I need a special equation. Now, why would I have thought that nazir is different? My chiddush, what's the chiddush about nazir? Now, the whole idea is that if a person can go ahead and take an animal and say voluntarily, I want to bring a carbon shlam. I can even bring a carbon oila, a carbon tater, but I cannot say, you know what, voluntarily I bring a carbon chatas. A chatas, you can't. It's not based on a voluntary. You cannot voluntarily bring a carbon chatas. You committed a sin, you have to bring it. You didn't, you can't just voluntarily bring it. So therefore, ilema, and one of the kabbanas of a nazir is a chatas. So ilam, you think the lematris lechatas nazir beneder. If a person says, I want to voluntarily bring a carbon chatas nazir, nothing happened. You're not bound by it. So therefore, I would have thought there's because I cannot bring such a carbon with a neder, maybe there's no bal ta'achir here. Maybe there's no issue of delaying either. And that's why we need this special equation. Says what it can't be. Harichatas chaylev. The classical case of a chatas is always called the chatas of eating treifa fat, because as the Rishonim say, the most common avera that people do, they eat by mistake treifa home. You went shopping, you brought home, you didn't realize what you brought home was treif. So the most common carbon chatas is chaylev, eating something not kosher. So therefore, we call the chatas by the name of chatas chaylev. So every chatas, every chatas, you cannot voluntarily bring it, and yet the pasuk tells us that if you bring a chatas and you're late, you're over about to acher. So why is nazir any different? So why can't you learn nazir from all other carbon chatas? What's so unique about nazir that I would have thought as a result of that I wouldn't be over about tachet? I'll tell you. I would have thought, if he would have said had any nazir. If a person it says, I want to be a nazir, I feel mechartzen. If a person says, I want to separate myself, but only from grapes, what happens? So the big machlek is he a nazir only from grapes, or nothing happens, or he's a nazir from everything? That even though he only mentioned one of the averis, he becomes a nazir in everything. That's a big chumrah to say that all he mentioned was grapes, and we turn around and we say, hey, you're a complete nazir. You're not allowed to go to the cemetery. You're not allowed to drink wine. You're not allowed to take a haircut. That's a big chumrah that we have by nazir. So I would have thought because it has that chumrah, therefore it's different than all other kabbanas, all other averis, and maybe he doesn't have bal ta'achar. So I would have thought, he said, I feel mechatz. If he said I'm a nazir only from grapes, having nazir lechol, he becomes a nazir for everything. I would have thought, he shouldn't be over bal ta'achar kamash malon. That's why we need a special equation to tell you that you are. So Gemara says it totally doesn't first of all, technically, and then logically. First of all, technically, there is an argument. So this only makes sense according to one that says, Ki nazir mechartzen having nazir l'chol. And if you're nazir just from grapes, automatically become a nazir from them all, so therefore it's big chumrah. So therefore, I would have thought maybe it's different than all other kabbalas. El Rab Shimon, according to Rab Shimon, the Tan Rab Shimon, the Amr says, Ein nazir, you are not considered a nazir. Add until sheyazim and kulam. You can't just specify one of them. You have to say I'm a nazir from all of them. Because if you say I'm a nazir from grapes, nothing happens. You're not a nazir at all. You have to mention all of them. So remember, what's the chiddush then? Nazir is no different than any other aveda. You're not even aveda. So you do the aveda proper. Number one. Number two, the whole thing doesn't make sense in logic. On the contrary, if we would have thought that nazir is more lenient than all other avedas, I would then carry it over and say maybe also it's more lenient. I'm not over the avera about the acher for delaying my kabbanas. But if you're telling me that nazir is stricter than all other avedas, that even I just mentioned grapes, only part of the avera, I become a total nazir, then surely I should have the chumrah of Baal Ta'ach. Not I should have less, I should have more. I should be stricter than everything else. So why do I need a special equation? Says furthermore, hi chiddush l'chumrah. This chiddush turns it into a chumrah. So Gemara said, no. So my chiddush, what is the chiddush of nazir? Why taka do you need the equation as well as to tell you about the acher according to Mazutra? When you already have the pasuk Dorish Yeshena tell you all kabbanas chatos you have about acher. So Gemara explains. The salke datrim, I would have thought hoyo since the ingila chal achas mishlashtem. What happens? You brought, let's say, the carbon chatas, and you're supposed to bring 3 kabbanas, an oile, a chatas, and a shlamim. And let's say you bring only 1 carbon, and you bring a carbon chatas, and then you take a haircut. The chiddush is yatsa ya yatsa. That's a leniency, because usually you shouldn't do the clear haircut till after you complete all 3 kabbanas. You did it straight away. Is loy lavel about tach? I would have thought maybe you're not even over about tach either. Kamashalon, that even though it has that leniency, but it does not have the leniency about tach. And that's why you need this special equation, nazir from neder, to teach you about tach. Now the big machlek is showing him here if the nazir is permitted to take a haircut only after one of the kabbanas, or this is only b'diavad. If you took a haircut, it's all right. And plus, does it make a difference which carbon he brought? Because Rashi here, for example, says carbon chatas, others say other kabbalas. So that's answer number 4. Answer number 5. The eBay say, sorry, this is within answer number 4. You want to know what the chiddush of Nazir is, why you would have thought that Nazir is no Baal Ta'achir. You want to know what the leniency of Nazir is. We just said about a haircut. I'll tell you another one. The eBay say, my chiddush, go back to our first answer. If you made a promise, you made a vow or an oath that you are going to bring a chatas of a Nazir, you don't have to abide by it. Then we ask the question, any chatas, you don't have to abide, and yet you're violated about ta'achir. What's so special about Nazir? The harder kokash, this is what you asked. Chatas chaylev. What about every chatas? Also, you cannot do on a voluntary basis. There's a difference. Chatas chaylev ka'asil kapara. Why do you bring a carbon chatas? Because you need an atonement. So therefore, it makes sense. We don't want you to hang around with a noose around your head. We want a neck. We want you to go ahead and bring the carbon as soon as possible. So therefore, when it comes to an ordinary chatas, there's a bal ta'achir. We don't want you to lay your kapara. As soon as you have a chance to do tshuva, do tshuva. But chatas nazir l'may asya. The nazir brings 3 karbanas, one of the chatas. What avera do you do? You didn't do an avera. Even though we're going to learn the Gemara later, Rav Shimon says, that Shmuel talks about, that every nazir committed a sin because shetzir atzmai min hayayin. You deny yourself one of the benefits of this world, and that's not a good thing to deprive yourself. Obviously, you shouldn't be inebriated, but nothing wrong with having a little bit of wine and you deprive yourself. That's the avera. So you did do an avera, and that's why you bring karbachatas. But the Rishonim will say, but it's not really the primary reason why I bring a chatas. It's not, even though you might have done a little avera, it's not a chet gomer, as the expression is. Okay, so the Gemara, by the chatas you led is. What about a chatas? Every woman who gives birth has to bring a carbon chatas. The asla kapara, what they do? They brought a child into the world, a beautiful thing, and yet they bring a carbon chatas. And over there, and the over level to baltacher, and we know that you're over baltacher. Some of the Rishonim ask, how do you know? Maybe that's also you shouldn't be over. But anyway, right now we're assuming you're over baltacher. So Gemara explains that's also different. And that is therefore it's imperative to bring it, and we want to bring it as soon as possible. Why? That allows you to start eating kachim. And because that allows you to start eating kachim, there's a mitzvah to eat karbanas. So we want you to, the woman, to bring the karban chatas as soon as possible to be able to eat the karbanas. So on ordinary chatas, it's a kapara. We want to do it as soon as possible. Baltach. A woman who brings a karban chatas, we want to do it as soon as possible to allow her to eat kachim. And why is that important? Because there's a mitzvah to eat kachim. But a chatas nazir, there's no mitzvah. So we would have thought there's no baltach. But it doesn't allow you to do any mitzvahs. Therefore, we need a special equation. First of all, big machlekes Rishonim. Is there a mitzvah to eat kachim? Is there a mitzvah to eat a carbon? There's a mitzvah for kohenim. We had in Gemara in Psachim. There's a mitzvah to eat those who are atoned, and that's kohenim. But the Yisrael, where is there a mitzvah to eat your carbon? So the Ran says over here, we're talking about a carbon pesach. In other words, the Ran is saying, you're right. There is no mitzvah to eat karbanos for Yisrael, but a carbon pesach there is, and that's what we mean by a mitzvah. But the Rosh over here and Tais over here says, no, there's a mitzvah on the Yisrael to eat the carbon. It's part of the kapara. And Rashi says that in Psachim. There's a big machlekes in Rishonim, whether there's a mitzvah for Yisrael to eat kachim or not. And the machlekes there's in Psachim, but it's actually right here. All the Rishonim right here on this Gemara argue this very point. The other question is by Nazir, there is a mitzvah by Nazir to drink wine. There's a mitzvah by Nazir to drink wine of Kiddush. So what are you telling me that by Nazir there's no mitzvah? And therefore, we would have thought that there's no Baal Ta'achir, that he has to be able to drink wine. And Kamash Lan, that no, there's an equation to tell you, there's a mitzvah to drink wine, Kiddush, and Shabbos. So we're going to learn at the beginning of Nazir about that. But Rabbeinu Tam answers, since you don't have to drink wine, Kiddush, because you can always make Kiddush and Challah. Because there's an alternative, therefore, it's not pressing. On the other hand, if you have a mitzvah to eat karbanas, there's no alternative. You have to eat the carbon that you bring. Okay, something more further. Another thing that we learned from that hekesh, from that equation, from Nazir, from Nedarim, we said another thing is that just like Nedarim, the father has the right to annul his daughter's vows, or a husband can annul the wife's vows, which relate to their relationship. So too, when it comes to Nazir, so we need to learn Nazir from Nedarim. The father and the husband can annul the wife or daughter's Nedarim. After Nazir, so too by Nazir, so made for Nazir. that if a daughter becomes a nazir, the father can annul it. A young daughter, Naira younger, well, Baal Meifan is his ishta, and a husband can annul the naziris of his wife. Says the Gemara, Lomali Hekesha, why do you have to use the method of Hekesh? Teise Bamematzinu. There's another method of learning called Bamematzinu. That's what do you find over here? So and so. So over here also it should be very similar. The difference between learning a Mematzinu or a Hekesh is when you have two ideas in one pasuk, so we equate one to another. The difference is when there's a Hekesh, first two rules. Ein Hekesh lemechza, you cannot make a Hekesh halfway. You can't just learn one or two dinim. If you compare the two, then everything in every respect is similar. And by Mematzinu, we could say, you can only learn a few things. And the second thing is, by Mematzinu, if you have a good question and say, hey, but they're different, then the Mematzinu falls apart. But when it comes to a Hekesh, if the Torah specifically put these two ideas in the same pasuk, you can't ask questions on a Hekesh. So Gemara says right over here, why do you need a Hekesh? Let's remember, what question could you ask? So Gemara, no, there is a question. Because Dilma Gab and Nedarim, we can argue as follows. When it comes to a vow, a person can make a vow, I will never eat meat the rest of my life. It has no end. So it makes sense that the husband can say, if this particular thing affects their relationship, I have to have the right to annul it, otherwise we can't stay together in the same house. But when it comes to a nazir, it's only 30 days. Most nazirs, stam nazirs is 30 days. So you could put up with it for 30 days. So maybe the husband doesn't have the right to annul, saying, hey, it will become very, very difficult, and so on. So we would have thought, by Nedarim, there's no fixed time period. You can make it forever. When it comes to Naziris, there's a time period because we learned Stam Naziris Lamed Yom, an average Nazir is 30 days. Because it says in the Pasuk Kodesh Yiyah, and Yiyah, the Gemara will learn out, Yud and two Hays is 30. So we know a Stam Nazir is 30 days. So I thought that maybe the husband or the father has no right to interfere or intervene. Kamashlan, that they still do. Okay, the next part of the Mishnah explains the idea of Yadus. Yadus means it's incomplete. Now, there's four kinds of vows. There's a vow which is 100% a vow, a neder gam. And that itself we discussed, there's two kinds of neder gam. Some say that the only real neder mahatayra is if you compare it to a carbon. In other words, your matvasid, you say that I want that this meat to be to me also just like an animal, which is a carbon. And just like a carbon is a dover hanodar, I can take an ordinary animal and consecrate it. So too, I can take anything and do the same thing. So what I'm doing is I am transferring the potential kedusha of a carbon or isa to me, and I'm bringing it over to this piece of meat. So some Rishonim hold that's the only neder from the Torah. All other nedarim are called yadis, if you don't compare it to a carbon. And then you have the Ran and other Rishonim hold no, mahatayra, if I make a complete neder, that this meat should be forbidden to me, that's a neder mahatayra. Or I say the meat should be like a carbon, either one. Then you have yadis. Yadis which is an incomplete statement. But there's two categories of yadis. There's yadayim moichichais and yadayim she'ena moichichais. Yadayim is like the handle of a keli. You didn't complete the sentence. Yadayim moichichais is, it's quite obvious what you're trying to say. You just didn't finish the sentence. There are some people who are a bit abrupt or they don't say complete sentences, but we know exactly what you mean. That's called a yadayim moichiach. And that the Mishnah tells us clearly is a neder. Then you have yadayim, and that's matar. Then you have, we learn from a pasuk. Adi learned it from Linder Neder and Nazir Lahazir. So we learn it from Nazir Lahazir and we compare Neder to Nazir. Or we learn it from Kolam Yoshim Apiv Yas. So we learn it from somewhere. Then you have Yadayim She'ein Mechichas. It's not so clear what you're trying to say. We think we know what you're trying to say, but it's, you could interpret your words a little bit differently. That's called a Yadayim She'ein Mechichas. And here we're going to have a big machlekes whether it's valid or not. And then you have something that's not even Yadayim. You can't pull a handle because it's really very difficult to know 100% what you're trying to say. Okay, so now the Gemara will have a discussion. In our Mishnah, it says Yadayim. Is our Mishnah talking about Yadayim Moichichais or even Yadayim She'ein Moichichas? When we say by Nedarim, Yadayim is a valid neder. What about Yadayim She'ein Moichiach? Is that a valid neder, Mahatayr or something, or not? Now, our Mishnah said three things. You said Mudrani Mimach, or Mufrashani Mimach, I'm separate from you, or Muruchakani Mimach, I'm distant from you. And then it says, She'ani Oichlach, I will eat by you, She'ani Toilach, I will taste by you. And right, it says, Us is forbidden. So how do we read the Mishnah? Comes along Shmuel and says, it's not 5 different cases. Shmuel says you have the first three cases, and then the next two is any one of the first three cases, and you concluded with one of the next two. In other words, you said Mudrani Mincha, I am making a neder from you. In what sense? Shani oichlach. Well, that I will not eat from you. Or Mudrani Mincha Shani Tanach, I will taste for you. Or Mufrashani Mincha Shani oichlach. In other words, he puts together the last two. The last two are two options for the first three. One of those three options. So it's really one neder, and we call it a yad because he didn't spell out exactly. Ani oichelach probably means I won't eat from you, but it could mean I will eat by you, or whatever. It could mean other things, or it could mean I'm going to separate from you. If I eat by you, I'll never have anything to do with you again. There's different ways, even though it's more far fetched. So it's yadayim mechir. He probably meant to say I won't eat by you, but it's a yadayim. It's not really a full neder because you still need to interpret it. So come along, Shmuel. And the Gemara today and tomorrow will discuss what Shmuel is saying. Shmuel says, Bikulan, in all of these cases, the way you read the Mishnah is not that it's 5 cases. It's the first 3 opening sentences, either Mudrani, Mufrashani, Murukani, and Achiyim, but that means nothing until you conclude Shani Oichelach, Sha'ani Toimlach. You have to clarify what you mean. So you have to continue and say Mudrani Mecha, Sha'ani Oichelach. Mufrashani Mecha, Sha'ani Oichelach. Okay, says the Gemara. Otherwise, it's not considered a neder. Says the Gemara. I'll ask you a question from a Braisa. It says, "Muder ani memcha." Example 1. Mufreshani memcha, merechakani memcha, hareza us. So it sounds like from the Braisa. He didn't conclude with anything else. He just said that opening comment, and already it's considered a neder. Then the Braisa continues. She'ani oichelach, she'ani toimlach, hareza aser. Clear from the Braisa that is 2 distinct nedarim, either one of the first 3 or one of the second 2. Shmuel said that when you read our Mishnah, it's one neder. You have to bunch together the first one of those 3 opening statements together with when you're more descriptive in the second 2. And here the Braisa clearly separates the 2, as there's 5 different examples of making a neder. Says the Gemara. This is how you read the Braisa. When is it said? If he said, this is how you read the Braisa. It's not 2 separate cases. When do we say, when I said Mudrani Memcha, it's asr? Only if I concluded with Sha'ani Oichelach, or I concluded with Sha'ani Toimlach. It's bridge them together. When is this said that it's considered neder? But Sha'ani Oichelach, Sha'ani Toimlach. Says the Gemara, but Tanya learned in another Braisa, Ivcha, the exact opposite order. First I said, it says in the Braisa, Shani Oichelach, Shani Toimlach, Asr. And then it says, Mufrashani, Murukani. It says the other 3 examples. And so therefore, L'chayda, and you can't say, Shani Oichelach is also only the same. Once you say Sha'oichel, we know what you mean already. So how do you understand? And Shmuel says that it's not Aver until you say the entire sentence. Mudrani lecha mimrach she'ani oichelach. The second Braisa clearly seems to be saying shani oichelach is enough. Shani is enough. Says the Gemara, no. I'll tell you how to read the Braisa as well. Mudrani, sorry, there it says shani oichelach, shani toimlach, also forbidden. So first it gives those examples, and then it says mudrani mimcha, mufrashani mimcha, meruchakani mimcha, harez asr. It is forbidden. So it says again. Oh, I'll tell you what we'll do. Tani hachi, this is how you should read the Braisa. Ukvar ama mudrani. When is it considered a neder or a yad of a neder if I say shani oichlach? If I also already first prefaced my comment by saying the words mudrani or mufreshani or murchakani. So again, Shmuel is right. You need to say both together to be considered. In other words, you need a yodayim meichiach. You need when you say mudrani mimach shani oichlach, it's quite obvious what you mean, even though it's not 100%. Because you could interpret a little bit differently, but at least it's all probability that's what you meant. That's yadayim meichiach. But if he just said the words mudrani memach, means not. What do you? In what way? It can mean a million different things, and therefore that's called yadayim she'eina meichiach. So if so, what's the difference between 2 Braisas? Number 1. But furthermore, asur lama lilamister. According to Shmuel, both of these Braisas are telling you in order to be a proper neder, you have to bridge the 2, the preface and the description. But why didn't it say the word asr in between? It says in both Braisas, it says, for example, the first Braisa, it says, Mudrani, Mufrashani, Mulchani, Hareza asr. It Sounds like it's the end of a case. And then it says Shani Oichel, Shani Oichel, Asa, the end of another. It's like, it seems that just saying the words Mudrani Mimach is already Asa. I don't have to add anything to it. How does Shmuel understand that? Ella Shmuel. Shmuel says, this is how you understand what Shmuel is saying. Time, the whole reason is, he said, I guess, there's a difference between the Bryce and the Mishnah. Our Mishnah definitely clearly learns it's one sentence. Mudrani Mimach, and you must conclude with either Oichel or not Oichel. Because our Mishnah doesn't have the word Asa twice at all. And so on and so forth. And it uses one word Asa to explain all 5 cases. So it goes like this. The reason is the Amar Sha'ani Oichelach Sha'ani Toimlach Huda Asa v'Chavei. You're right. Maybe if you just say Mudrani Mimach might be also forbidden, but there's a difference. If you say just Mudrani Mimach, then it works both ways. I'm completely Asa to you, and therefore I'm Asa to you. I'm Asa from you, I'm Asa to you. But if I clearly spell out Mudrani Mimach Sha'ani Oichelach, what am I spelling out? That I'm spelling out what my neder is, that I will not eat from you, then it's only one way. And that's what Shmuel is saying here. If you want the neder to be only one way, that I will not benefit from you, but I'm not answering myself to you, then the Mishnah concludes Sha'ani Oichelach. But if you don't say Sha'ani Oichelach, you just say Mudrani Mimach, then it works both ways. Then that I am Asa from you and I am Asa to you. That's what Shmuel is trying to say. That's why I cannot have any benefit from you, but you can have benefit from me, and you can have benefit from me. If he would have just said Mudrani Himach, like the Brisa, L'chude, you're right, it's a valid neder. You're right, it says twice also because it's a valid neder. But you know the din is different. Shnei and Asurim. They're actually both forbidden to each other. Why? Like Rabbi Yechonina actually said, Mudrani Himach, if I use those words, just Mudrani Himach, that I am Asa to you and I am Asa from you. Shnei and Asurim. You cannot benefit from me, nor can I benefit from you. And that's how we understand Shmuel right now. You're right. Even if I said Mudrani Mimcha, it's a valid neder, but it has a different outcome. That outcome, they're both Asa to each other, but Mudrani Himlach is only Asa one way. So we'll just finish this little piece. So, Tanan, let me ask you a question. Now we looked in the Mishnah, Hareini Alecha Chedim, I am forbidden you Chedim, Hamudar Asa. Then that means you, Reuben is saying to Shimon, I am Asa to you. That means Shimon cannot have any benefit from Reuben. But the Reuben could clearly have benefit from Shimon. I never said that I want to have benefit from Shimon. Yeah. So the question on Shmuel. It says clearly it says even though you said Harein Alecha Chedim, you didn't spell out in what way. I didn't mention a word about not eating or anything else. I just said Mudrani, the same idea Mudrani Mimach, and yet it clearly says here that it's only one way, it's only one direction. And you said before that if you don't spell out Shani Oichelach, it works multi-directional, both directions. Said Gemara, keep going. You know what's talking about here? The Parish, the Bryce, the Mishnah is missing a few words. You actually spelled out the Atolai. I am Asa to you, and you are Asa to me. That's what he says over here, and that's why. Sorry, the Atolai loy. He clearly said, but you are not Asa to me, because he clearly said you will not be Asa to me. That's why you can have benefit from me. So we'll continue. It says. At Olai Chedim, he says, you are forbidden to me. Reuben Shimon, you are forbidden to me. So Reuben can no longer benefit from Shimon. But Shimon can benefit from Reuben. Again, a question of Shmuel. You said when you don't add the words loch, it's works both ways. Here says clearly it's only one direction. We're answered again. Going the Parish, he clearly enunciates. But I am not also to you. Otherwise, Shmuel says it would be us in both directions. So you might understand. What happens if he doesn't spell it out? Shnei and Asurim. So you tell me if he doesn't spell it out, then they're both us to each other. Hamidiktani Sefer, since it says in the Sefer Hareini Alecha, it says in the Sefer Ba'atolai, I am to you us and you're us to me. Shnei and Asurim. It sounds like from there the only time they're both us to each other is if you spell it out. You're us to me and I'm us to you. But you, Shmuel, say that even if you don't spell it out, automatically, if you just say the words Hareini Chedim, it goes both ways. Hadina L'Shnei Masurin. Hastama, but if it's general, who Asa Chayim Mutzir? Question you Shmuel. So the Gemara then gives a new pshat in Shmuel. And I guess you'll continue from here tomorrow because it goes on to the bottom of the page. What exactly Shmuel is saying. So actually, till then is the next page. Okay, we'll stop over here. I'll continue next week in Mitzvah Shem.